Gold participants and listeners from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And I'm here today with Annabelle MacKenzie. We're going to talk about her upcoming presentation. Welcome, Annabelle.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you here with me today. You are one of the presenters at the Gold Lactation Online Conference of 2019, aren't you?
That's correct.
It's wonderful to have you here a little before the actual conference starts so we can give our listeners a little bit of information about what this presentation is about and about your background. So tell us, first of all, Annabelle, where are you in the world?
Um, so, Thanks for that, Kristen. I live in a county called Suffolk, which is to the east of England. It's just underneath Norfolk, and so you've got Norfolk, which is kind of to the north, and we're on the border with Norfolk, where I am. I'm in a small village called Lake and Heath. Um, and we're a few hours from London, about half an hour from Cambridge.
Wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. It gives us a little bit of an idea, a picture where you're located. It's always good to know because, we are we have such an international audience, so we can maybe picture you in Suffolk. Okay, and tell us a little bit about your background. What kind of professional journey have you taken?
So where should I start? I suppose probably the beginning of my journey in lactation support was just after my daughter was born. Um, so that would have that's nearly that's kind of 12 years ago. So so shortly after she was born, I started getting involved in lactation support over in France. I had both my children in France, and from there, I kind of graduated on to working in the NHS in the UK, and then became a lactation consultant in 2017. Um, and My latest post, so currently I have a small private practice, but my main, kind of day job is working as a contractor for the United States Air Force here in Suffolk as the hospital lactation consultant. So I'm based in the OBGYN clinic. Um, but I kind of work all over the hospital. So I work on labour and delivery and um, on the labour and delivery ward, with the new babies. And then I also work, I kind of pop into the paediatric department as well to kind of sit in on the newborn checks. Um, that's kind of my clinical role, and then I also have a bit of a teaching role. So obviously teaching parents, so doing breastfeeding teaching classes and also training staff. So kind of monthly get together with some of the nursing staff and other people.
How wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You're right there at the hospital, so when a new mom needs you, you're right there and can help out, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's a fantastic service really that's provided. And I've seen kind of both sides because I've seen also, the public health system in the UK. So I've
Right.
worked in hospitals in the UK prior to these roles that I'm doing now. And I've also worked as an infant feeding lead. So I was the infant feeding coordinator for a while for Suffolk County Council in the community, so serving the community. Um, but that was with the health visitors, so not on labour ward. But I have
Right.
worked on labour wards previously. But in general, I mean, there's in the UK, just to give people an idea, um, the IBCLC role, whilst there are a few of us in hospitals in the UK
Mm.
or in community services, serving communities, once the children have left hospital, um, that's not a very developed role yet within the public
Mm-hmm.
health system. Unfortunately, it's growing, which is great. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
compared to like 10 years ago, it's definitely come on. Whereas, I'm part of a US system, and it's obviously because it comes from the United States originally as a credential. Obviously it's better known.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
That's
why
right.
we have that IBCLC in the hospital. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And with your role there, you can also, as you said, it's an emergent field in the UK. So with your educating people and you spreading awareness as well, right?
Right, we hope. Yeah, we try to. Yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned you had both of your children in France. When you had them, was there a lot of lactation support available to you and in the area, as you know?
No, I was in Paris and in 2007, and things were pretty dire still then.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting though was there was a nurse there who was incredibly helpful, who was actually training to be a lactation consultant. Although I don't think we knew that at the time, and she was
Uh-huh.
incredibly helpful, I remember. And we also discovered lactation consultants through a local La Leche League group,
Right.
but also we also found somebody in private practice. So all in all, we got fantastic help. We were incredibly lucky, and the lactation consultant that we saw was brilliant. And I suppose my vocation was born, at that point. So.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful. And before you started, and this is almost like a little segue into your presentation topic here. Before you started your journey as a lactation consultant and educator, you were lecturing in or also involved in film and TV production, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, mainly I was involved in the kind of burgeoning, very early days of uh, new media.
Uh-huh.
Broadband TV, things like that. I did work on small independent productions as well, but the main, the last places that I'd worked in were mainly, things, kind of broadband TV channels, that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, because it was a growth area just before I left the
Absolutely.
profession. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely interesting because here's your topic, rummaging in the tool bag, examples of approaches borrowed from other disciplines applied in lactation support practice. And I feel
Mhm.
like, you have a good background, you have a varied background, you have, other expertise, and I think it pulls it nicely together. I don't know exactly what you did in the field of TV production there exactly, but it feels like, you have that background coming from another, industry, so to
Yeah.
speak, and you're taking all you've learned and putting it together and using it in your lactation practice as well. That's what it sounds like to me. Am I correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't use too much production experience, although, you know, I never say never. But no, I don't tend
Right,
to use my TV production experience that much in my lactation. But it's true. It does give me a different perspective. And
right,
one of the things was when I was working. So the kind of the genesis of this talk really came out of um, my time as an infant feeding lead at Suffolk County Council. And while I was there, I came across a lot of new things. The science of safety approach that I'm going to be talking about during my talk, and the Solihull approach. And these were really, particularly the science of safety, was very embedded within the culture of the organization. And it struck me that there were several elements um, in these disciplines. I mean, sorry, in these approaches. So the approaches, are used by other disciplines. They're mainly used
right,
in child protection, or the Solihull approach is a kind of parenting approach, for helping parents to learn to become better parents, so to speak, and to engage more with their children and so on. So, whilst those were things that so just to kind of explain a bit to people who don't know the UK, the UK system very well, we have within community health, we have these nurses called health visitors,
Hmm.
and they see the children. So once the baby and the mother have been discharged from the midwifery care, the community midwife, they then go into the care of the health visitor, and they'll stay with the health visitor for several years. So the health visitor is responsible for the health of the child and the welfare of the child. So I was working towards accredit, helping the department work towards baby-friendly accreditation, and it was the health visiting department and the children's centres across Suffolk, um, across the main area of Suffolk. So, um, they use these things like signs of safety, these approaches like signs of safety and the Solihull approach in their everyday work. So it kind of occurred to me that there were elements because, I had to do the training, I had to
Right.
attend some of the training in these fields, and it kind of occurred to me that there were some elements within them that could be really usefully, adapted to lactation support practice. And the two things, the two or three things weren't that separate after all.
Hmm. Yeah. Wonderful. So that's what the presentation will be about, and I'm really looking forward to this. That sounds
Thank you.
very interesting. Yes, yes. And before I let you go, what are you hoping our delegates and listeners will take away from this presentation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting to, obviously get an insight, however brief, into other approaches. So that's one thing that I hope that people will get. I hope it will kind of perhaps spark curiosity, and that they might want to go off and look at these approaches and see what they're
Right.
about in more detail. But I suppose the other thing I think that that I'm hoping to help people do is to see that um, we can find inspiration for our practice
Yes.
in lots of different places, and that sometimes we may be doing we may have to do a particular, I don't know, piece of course, a course or something for where we're
Yeah.
working, or a piece of coursework or something like that. And we're going to think, well, what's that got to do with my practice? And sometimes we can actually then, by kind of, bringing a fresh pair of eyes to it, we
Mm,
can kind of we can sometimes find new approaches or new
right.
elements, that we can bring to our practice. So I suppose that's all it's a
Yeah.
very simple takeaways, but
That's you say it's a simple takeaway, but it's a wonderful takeaway to look at with fresh eyes at what you know. Maybe when you're in a training that maybe is not necessarily related directly to lactation, but you can take what you learn from that and apply it and borrow it, as you said, and have more tools in your tool bag, right?
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the whole thing, really.
That's wonderful. Well, Annabelle, thank you so much for chatting here
Thank
with
you.
me today. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm excited about your presentation.
Well, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Kristen.
So, to our listeners, the presentation Rummaging in the Tool Bag Examples of Approaches Borrowed from Other Disciplines Applied in Lactation Support Practice by Annabelle MacKenzie is part of the Gold Lactation Online Conference of 2019. This presentation will be live on April 15th. So, if you want to check out this presentation, find more information on all the other presentations in the conference, please visit goldlactation.com. Thank you everyone for listening today. Bye bye.